We're urging you to not get burned again and switch to KOMODO. We promise. You won't get caught on fire, and you won't have any issues with accuracy. So I've come up with Fitbit's new slogan. Feel the burn. It's pretty good. Man, it's a tough day at the office for Fitbit, to be honest. In the most recent news, Google-owned Fitbit announced a voluntary recall of 1.7 million smartwatches that may overheat due to lithium-ion battery inside and burn the user. The recall is for a discontinued Fitbit Ionic smartwatch. It was introduced in 2017. And if you think that this is the first time Fitbit has come across these product issues and lawsuits, well, you are highly mistaken. But instead of just saying it, let's go through them, shall we? Back in 2015, Fitbit acknowledges latest devices are causing rashes. Advises to give your wrist a rest. Now, this is actually something that we've talked about a lot. And this is, you're going to see in future articles that I point out that there's a fundamental flaw when it comes to just simply the design, like the hardware design of the Fitbit watches. This one, they're talking about the Fitbit Surge watch. And this was one of the first of many issues, lawsuits, settlements for Fitbit. You know, unfortunately, what happens is, and we've talked about it in many other videos, the sensors in all of these wearables, whether it's ours, whether it's Fitbit, Whoop, and Aura, we all use pretty much the same sensor. It could be made from a different manufacturer, but some might make it in-house. Not that I'm aware of that yet. But these sensors are very sensitive. And Fitbit knew that. And, you know, what you have to do to get the most out of these sensors is have them as close to the skin as possible without any movement. But when you do that, you tie it too tight, you see exactly what happens. In other articles, I saw it was because of high lead, I think, in the actual bracelet. I think that's what was causing the rash. I might have to look that up, but let's move on, shall we? So this is from a court case. In 2016, just a year later, federal court denies Fitbit's motion to dismiss class action lawsuit alleging gross inaccuracies and the recording failures in Pure Pulse, trademark Pure Pulse. That's the trademark of their BPM. So the original lawsuit was filed, class action lawsuit was filed in 2016. Fitbit was trying to get it removed from court proceedings, and it failed. There was just too much. There's overwhelming support. There's overwhelming evidence that they are inaccurate. And it's touching on the point that I made from the prior article. The reason they're trying to get the bracelet as close to your skin as possible is because of that accuracy. But from purely a design standpoint, you can't. The tighter you tie it, I mean, you're going to cut off circulation to your hand. Your hand can't move, and it's uncomfortable. So you got to loosen it up, just like you would a normal watch. Nothing crazy about that, but these are the problems that ensue. Moving on. This one is kind of disturbing. 2017, in December, Fitbit and Jawbone reach a settlement, and they end litigation. Those people that aren't familiar with Jawbone, they were one of the very first, after Fitbit, to come out with a smart bracelet, I suppose. I can't remember. I remember the company, but they moved on to do speakers, things of that nature. But they had some technology, they saw what Fitbit was doing, and they had improved on it, so they say. And Fitbit which has a long history of stealing ideas, had stolen some ideas from Jawbone, which led to Jawbone suing. And in this article, the founder of Fitbit said, "Oh, this is just, this is competition." And he said that Jawbone is simply suing us to stop our momentum. But how did this end? Fitbit settled. Of course they did. No surprise there. Now, let's move on. Well, this one is even going back a bit. If you purchased and registered a Fitbit Flex, Fitbit 1, Fitbit Ultra between September 29, 2009 and 2014, you can get $1,250 from this class action settlement. And it was a settlement it was a lawsuit against the accuracy of their sleep tracking. So what's left? What is left out of the Fitbit features? They took down BPM, sleep, the material of the bracelet itself. I don't know what's left, frankly. Maybe we'll get to something. And once again, this was the big one, and this is an article from 2021. Fitbit targeted once again by class action lawsuits over inaccurate heart rate reportings. The plaintiffs claim that the products do not actually count every heartbeat. This would be contrary to what Fitbit's advertisement suggests. The lawsuit seeks injunctive relief as well as actual damage payments to compensate users for their economic injuries from Fitbit's heart rate claims. Now, this is something that we've been saying in other episodes for a long time. A lot of times Fitbit was a great company at the beginning because it was a community, and it still is a huge, strong community. But when they were starting, they really, truly, it was customer driven. It was whatever the customers wanted, they would do their best to do. Since they were purchased by Google, and even shortly after their initial success, they needed to find ways to cut corners. You have to. Now, this is interesting, actually, because they're saying it doesn't count every beat, like beat to beat. One of the things that these big companies do is, because it's such a small device, right? You have to understand kind of from the technology side of it. The batteries that you can fit in there are very small. If you're going to count every beat, that's going to take a bandwidth on the battery. Not bandwidth, but battery power. It's going to take away from the capacity. For this reason, just as a side, when KOMODO Technologies, we do an EKG monitor, that takes up a hell of a lot of battery. And that's why a lot of companies aren't doing it. So they sat down with their engineers and said, hey, we need to increase the battery capacity. They say, well, if we do that, our devices are going to be huge and you can't wear them. So they said, okay, let's optimize and relieve the battery of, work, essentially. So instead of taking your heart rate every second, they might move it to 10 seconds. That's why you're going to see that different. You're going to see a little bit of a delay when your BPM comes up if you own a Fitbit. So this is just one of the hundreds of examples that companies are just using cost cutting. They're using ways to manipulate the data that you see. That was actually another one of the lawsuits. Maybe I get to it in a different video. But that's essentially, you hate to kick them when they're down, but at the same time, it's always been about the customer, in my mind. And that's why we're urging you to not get burned again and switch to KOMODO with the IO Smart Sleeve. We promise you won't get caught on fire and you won't have any issues with accuracy. Large battery, fits perfect, great app. But yeah, that'll be the end of this video. Maybe we'll get into some more Fitbit things later on.